Hey, what's going on, guys? We read the book called What Everybody is Saying until page 8 in my last video. Here I'm going to continue this one further, actually page 28 according to this PDF. Now let's go and continue. For whom the tales told. Okay, now here from 28 to 36 we are going to go because I'm just decided to do 8 pages per video. So let's go and continue. For whom the tales told. On a fateful date in 1963 in Cleveland, Ohio, 39-year veteran detective Martin McFadden watched two men walk back and forth in front of a store window. They took turns peeking into the shop and then walking away. After multiple passes, the two men huddled at the end of the street looking over their shoulders as they spoke to a third person, concerned that the men were casing the business and intending to rob the store. The detective moved in, patted down one of the men, and found a concealed gun. Detective McFadden arrested the three men, thus thwarting a robbery, averting potential loss of life. Officer McFadden's detailed observation became the basis of a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision. Terry v. Ohio, 1968, 392 U.S. 1. Known to every police officer in the United States since 1968, this ruling has allowed police officers to stop and frisk individuals without a warrant when their behavior telegraph their intention to commit a crime. With this decision, the Supreme Court acknowledged that nonverbal behavior precedes criminality if those behaviors are observed and decoded properly. Terry v. Ohio provided a clear demonstration of the relationship between our thoughts, intention, and nonverbal behavior. Most important, this decision provided legal recognition such a relationship exists and is valid. Navarro and Scaffer, 2003, 22-24. So the next time someone says to you that nonverbal behavior does not have meaning or it's not reliable, remember this case as it says otherwise and has stood the test of time. Now, living our limbic legacy. Take a moment and bite your lip. Really take a second and actually do it. Now, rub your forehead. Finally, stroke your back and neck. These are things we do all the time. Spend some time around the people and you see them engaging in these behaviors on a regular basis. Do you ever wonder why they do it? Do you ever wonder why do you do it? The answer can be found hidden away in a vault, the cranial vault, where the human brain resides. Once we learn why and how our brain recruits our body to express its emotion non-verbally, we will also discover how to interpret this behavior. So let's take a closer look at inside the vault and examine the most amazing 3 pounds of matter found in the human body. Most people think of themselves as having one brain and recognize that brain as the seat of their cognitive abilities. In reality, there are brains inside the human skull, each performing specialized function that works together as the command and control center that regulates everything our body does. Back in 1952, a pioneering scientist named Paul MacLean began to speak of the human brain as a twin brain consisting of a repliant stem brain, mammalian limbic brain, and human neocortex brain. See diagram in Limbic Brain. In the book, we will be concentrating on limbic system of the brain, the part MacLean called as mammalian brain, because it plays largest role in the expression of our nonverbal behavior. However, we will use our neocortex, our human brain or thinking brain, to analyze critically the limbic reactions of those around us in order to decode what other people are thinking, feeling, or intending. Leitox, 1996, 184 to 189. Goldman, 1995, 10-21. It is critical to understand that the brain controls all behavior, whether conscious, subconscious. This premise is the cornerstone of understanding all nonverbal communications. From simply scratching your head to composing a symphony, there's nothing you do expect except for some involuntary muscle reflexes that is not governed or directed by the brain. By this logic, we can use these behaviors to interpret what the brain is choosing to communicate externally. Okay, here we have the diagram of the limbic brain with major features such as the amygdala and hippocampus. Okay, he provided the diagram. Now let's go and continue. The very elegant limbic brain. In our study of nonverbal communications, the limbic brain is where the action is. Why? Because it is part of the brain that reacts to world around us reflexively and instantaneously in real time and without thought. For that reason, it gives off a true response to information coming in from the environment. Myers, 1993, 35-39. Because it is uniquely responsible for our survival, the limbic brain does not take breaks. It is always on. The limbic brain is also emotional center. It is from there that signals go out to various other parts of the brain, which in turn orchestrate our behaviors as they relate to emotions or our survival. Lee Dogs, 1996, 104-137. These behaviors can be observed and decoded as they manifest physically in our feet, torso, arms, hands, and faces. Since these reactions occur without thought, unlike words, they are genuine. Thus, the limbic brain is considered the honest brain when we think of nonverbals. Goldman, 1995, 13-29. These limbic survival responses go back not only to our own infancy but also to our ancestry as human species. They are hardwired into our nervous system, making them difficult to disguise or eliminate, like trying to suppress a startle response even when we anticipate a loud noise. Therefore, it is axiomatic that limbic behaviors are honest and reliable behaviors. They are true manifestation of our thoughts, feelings, and intentions. See box 7. The third part of our brain is a relatively recent addition to cranial vault. Thus, it is called the neocortex, meaning new brain. This part of our brain also known as the human thinking or intellectual brain because it is responsible for higher order cognition and memory. This is the part of the brain that distinguishes us from other mammals due to large amount of its mass cortex used for thinking. This is the brain that got us to the moon with its ability to compute, analyze, interpret, and intuit at the level unique to the human species. It is our critical and creative brain. It is also, however, the part of the brain that is least honest. Therefore, it's our lying brain because it is capable of complex thought. This brain, unlike its limbic counterpart, is the least reliable of the three major brain components. This is the brain that can deceive, and it deceives often. Virch, 2003, 1-17. Heading of a bomber. Since the limbic part of the brain cannot be cognitively regulated, the behaviors it generates should be given greater importance when interpreting nonverbal communications. You can use your thoughts to try to disguise your true emotions all you want, but the limbic system will self-regulate and give off clues. Observing these alarm reactions and knowing that they are honest and significant is extremely important. It can even save lives. An example of this occurred in December of 1999 when an alert U.S. custom officer thwarted a terrorist who came to be known as the Millennial Bomber, noting the nervous and excessive sweating of Ahmed Rizam as he entered the United States from Canada. Officer Diana Dean asked him to step out of his car for further questioning. At the point, Rizam attempted to flee but was soon captured. In his car, officers found explosives and timing devices. Rizam was eventually convicted of plotting to bomb. the Los Angeles airport. The nervousness and sweating that Officer Dean observed were regulated in the brain as a response to immense stress. Because these limbic behavior are genuine, Officer Dean could be confident in pursuing reason with the knowledge that her observation had detected body language that justified further investigation. The reason affair illustrates how one's psychological state manifests non-verbally in the body. In this case, the limbic system of a would-be bomber who was obviously extremely frightened by the possibility of being directed gave away his nervousness despite all conscious attempts he made to hide his underlying emotions. Underlying emotions. We owe Officer Dean our gratitude for being an astute observer of nonverbal behavior and foiling a terrorist act. Returning to our early example, while the limbic system may compel the Millennial Bomber to sweat profusely while being questioned by the customs officer, the neocortex is quite capable of allowing him to lie about his true sentiments. The thinking part of the brain, which is part of the governance of speech, especially broadcast area, could cause the bomber to say, "I have no explosives in the car," should the officer inquire as to what is in his automobile. Even if the claim is an utter falsehood, the neocortex can easily permit us to tell a friend that we like her new haircut when we in fact do not, or it can facilitate a very convincing statement. "I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Mr. Lewinsky." Because neocortex, the thinking brain, is capable of dishonesty, it is a good source of reliable or accurate information. OST 2006 259 to 291. In summary, when it comes to revealing honest nonverbal behaviors that helps us to read people, the limbic system is holy grail of body language. Thus, this is the area of the brain where we want to focus our attention. Our limbic responses, the three F's of nonverbals. One of the classic way of the limbic brain has assured our survival as a species and performed a reliable number of nonverbal tells in the process is by regulating our behavior when confronting danger. Whether it be a prehistoric man facing a Stone Age beast or a modern day employee facing stone-hearted boss over the millennia, we have retained the competent, life-saving, visceral reactions of our animal heritage in order to ensure that our survival brain's very elegant response to distress or threats has taken three forms: freeze, flight, and fight. Like other animal species whose limbic brains protected them in this manner, humans processing these limbic reactions survived to propagate because these behaviors were already hardwired into our nervous system. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the phrase fight or flight response, which is common terminology used to describe the way in which we respond to threatening, dangerous situations. Unfortunately, this phrase is only 2/3 accurate and half-assed backward. In reality, the way animals, including humans, react to danger occurs in following order: freeze, flight, fight. If the reaction really were fight or flight, most of us would be bruised, battered, and exhausted much of the time. Because we have retained and honed this successful process for dealing with stress and danger. Because the resulting reaction generate nonverbal behavior that help us to understand a person's thought, feeling, and intentions. It is well worth our time to examine each response in a great detail. The freeze response. A million years ago, as early hominids traversed the African savanna, they were faced with many predators that could outrun and overpower them. For early man to succeed, the limbic brain, which had evolved from our animal forebears, developed strategies to compensate for power advantage our predators had over us. The strategy of first defense of the limbic system was to use the freeze response in the presence of the predator or other danger movements attracts attention. By immediately holding still upon sensing a threat, the limbic brain caused us to react in the most effective manner possible to ensure our survival. Most animals, certainly most predators, react to and attracted by movement. This ability to freeze in the face of danger makes sense. Many carnivores go after moving targets and exercise the chase tips and bite mechanism exhibited by large felines, the primary predators of our ancestors. Many animals not only freeze their motion when they confronted by predators, but some even play dead, which is the ultimate freeze reaction. This is a strategy that opossums use, but they are not even only animals to do so. In fact, accounts of the school shootings at Columbine and Virginia Tech demonstrate that students used the freeze response to deal with the deadly predators by holding still and playing dead. Many students survived even though they were only few feet away from the killer. Instinctively, the student adapted ancient behavior that worked very effectively. Freezing your movement can often make you nearly invisible to others, a phenomenon every soldier and SWAT team operator learns. Thus, the freeze response has been passed from primitive man to modern man and remains with us today and as our first line of defense against a perceived threat or danger. In fact, you can still see the ancient limbic reaction to large felines in the threats of Las Vegas, where big cats are part of the show. As the tiger or lion walks into the stage, you can be sure the people in the first row will be making an unnecessary arm hand gestures. They will be frozen in their seats. Okay, this is our last slide. Let's go and continue. These people were not issued memos to remain still. They did so because the limbic brain has prepared the human species to behave that way in the face of danger for over 5 million years. In our modern society, the freeze response is employed more subtly in everyday life. You can observe it when people are caught buffing or stealing, or sometimes when they are lying. When people feel threatened or exposed, they react just like our ancestors did a million years earlier. They freeze. Not only have we as humans learned to freeze in the face of observed and perceived danger, but others around us have learned to copy our behavior and freeze their behavior also, even without seeing the threat. This mimicry of isopraxism, same movement, evolved because it was a critical communal survival as well as social harmony within the human species. See box 8 on the next page. Okay, this freezing action is sometimes termed the deer in the headlights effect. When suddenly caught in a potential dangerous circumstance, we immediately freeze before taking action. In our day-to-day life, this freeze response manifests innocently, such as when a person walking down the street stops suddenly, perhaps hitting himself on the forehead with the palm of his hand before turning around and heading back to his apartment to turn off the stove. The momentary stop is enough for the brain to do some quick assessing whether the threat comes in the forms of predator or of a thought. Remembered either way, the psyche must deal with the potential dangerous situation. The night the hand stopped moving, I was at my mother's house a few weeks ago, watching television and eating ice cream with the members of the family. It was late at night and some rang the doorbell, something that is very unusual in the neighborhood. Suddenly, in the midst of eating, everyone's hands froze, adults and children alike, as if choreographed. It was amazing to see how we all reacted with hand flash frozen at precisely the same moment. It turned out that the visitor was my sister who had forgotten her keys, but of course we didn't know it was her ringing the bell. It was a beautiful example of the hardwired communal response to perceived danger. and of the first limbic reaction, which is to freeze. Okay, I stopped right here because I reached 36, and I'm gonna continue this one on my next video. I hope you guys find this video helpful. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.